Welcome to Quilter Private Female Financial View podcast, your monthly insight into the topics and trends that are relevant to women trying to navigate the world of finance. So you don't miss future episodes, be sure to hit the follow button on whichever streaming platform you are listening on, or by following #QC Female Financial View on LinkedIn. I'm your host, Vanessa Eve, investment manager based in our Leeds office. And this month, I am pleased to be joined by Jo Welman, a chartered financial planner for Quilter based in our London office. So thank you very much for joining us today, Jo. Now, often when I'm helping clients for the first time, one of the first questions that I'm asked is, what is the difference between a financial planner and an investment manager? Aren't they just the same thing? And so to try and help out with this, I use the analogy of when someone is building a house, you would employ an architect to design the structure of your house, but you wouldn't then ask the architect to build the house. You would get in a builder to tell you which materials to use to best build the house that you have designed or the architect has designed. So in this situation, the financial planner designs the structure of your finances, while the investment manager selects the best investments to meet the financial objectives that you're trying to achieve. So hopefully for those listening, this helps to explain that there is actually quite a fundamental difference in what we each do within our own area of expertise, which actually complements one another. And it's on that note that I'd like to bring in Jo, because with the world of financial planning changing often at a really dramatic pace, what do you see as the benefits of working collaboratively with an investment manager to meet the financial objectives of your clients?
Firstly, thank you very much for having me. So for me, financial matters have greatly evolved over the years, and showing the benefit has become increasingly difficult, especially because you've got so many online platforms and information that's readily available to clients. So I think combining the two expertise gives the clients the best of both worlds. They benefit from a personalized plan, looking at mitigating their risk, ensuring the tax efficiency, and using all the available allowances and avoiding capital depletion, along with the appropriate risk management, the sufficient portfolio diversification, active fund management, and then the ease of the administration.
And I think it's fair to say, given the past 18 months, a lot has changed both in the financial planning world, but also in investment management. So having two experts looking at these individual parts in tandem with one another really does help. And yes, I think indeed. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's where I suppose Quilter Private in particular, we've been doing a lot of work around what we call the female financial journey and the challenges that are specifically faced by women when it comes to planning their investment and financial journeys in the first place. Jo, what do you see as the major obstacles that women primarily face, and how can that specifically impact on their financial well-being?
So with this list, I think it can be pretty extensive, but there's four main things that I would cover. So the first thing is financial confidence. A lot of women feel intimidating when discussing financial matters and having to make complex investment decisions. So instead of confronting their fears and utilizing the expertise of professionals, they shy away from the topic and they avoid addressing it. Avoiding and addressing this issue will actually have an increased shortfall, especially when it comes to their retirement planning. The second point would be that generally women are more risk adverse than men. So again, this particularly impacts their long-term investment planning. So they're not willing to take risk to reduce the compounding effect of their investments. And this greatly impacts the fund value over a long period of time. The third thing would be time. Mostly the women are the primary caregivers for children and for their aging parents. So women have far less time compared to men. The financial planning seems to be one of those things that always gets pushed to the bottom of the to-do list. And it might be years before they actually address the issues. So not using your available allowances for several years will actually impact the overall tax efficiency of their planning. And as a result, they'll have this will impact their the net value of their portfolios. The final thing would be the gender age gap. So shockingly, this is still true in current times. So on average, women are getting paid far less than men. The employer pension schemes, they are based on employee and employer contribution as a percentage of their earnings. So getting paid less means that we effectively are saving less towards our retirement. We're also having reduced net disposable income, which means that we've got reduced emergency funds. We've got less money towards our family protection planning. And it also means that we're saving less to meet our short-term goals.
And I think it's that last point, because obviously paying men and women different salaries for the same job is clearly illegal. But for women working in different sectors, and the trend has been that women do work in sectors that are paid far less than men, actually, it doesn't matter if employers are contributing the same percentage basis if women are earning less in the first place. So that's a really important point, I think, to highlight and raise. Jo, I'd also like to pick up specifically on your point about women being more risk averse to men. Do you see this as being more the case that women are more cautious than men when it comes to investing? Or does it almost go back to that point that you said about the gender pay gap? It's more to do with the fact they don't have the capacity to see a drop in value of their investments because they're actually able to save less and therefore don't have that capacity to see drops in the value of their investments in the first place.
I think it's a combination of both. To be honest, I think as females, we are less risky than men. I think it's also to do with the fact of what we were exposed to during our careers. So I'm thinking, if you like, probably this is a long shot, but I think if you look at the statistics of compliance and for any company, it will probably come up that women are a safer bet in the workplace because we probably have
Yes.
less issues when it comes to compliance or regulations, because we kind of tend to stick to the rules, which I think is our nature as women, and that makes us less risky. So I think we don't necessarily take the risk reward ratio into account, particularly when we're doing investment planning over a long period of time. And also then the combination of the fact that we do get paid less. So seeing the capacity for loss and seeing the actual fund values is also true.
And that's a really fair point, because sometimes it could actually be an educational piece, which as an investment manager, we will actually do, that we help our clients understand what risks they need to take to be able to achieve their financial objectives. So there is an educational piece to be done specifically for women who haven't had as much exposure to investments, maybe as their sort of male counterparts. And I suppose a follow-on point from this, and it actually relates back to our previous podcast episode, which highlighted how the cost of childcare can often lead to families making difficult choices about whether both parents continue working or whether one parent stays at home. Now, some recent Office of National Statistics data showed that women on average are paid 9% less than men. So going back to your point about women being paid less. And given this, women still tend to be the ones who will give up work where the costs of remaining in work are just too high for that particular family. What do you see as the long-term financial impact for women who may opt to give up work to take care of their children?
So the biggest impact here, I would say that we will be left with reduced retirement provision. If you combine this with the fact that women's life expectancy is longer than men, I think it's a recipe for disaster. The depletion of funds in later life is a real concern. From that, I also think divorce cases at the moment is posing a bit of a problem. So there's much more focus on women being able to return to work and receiving smaller rewards of maintenance. So the expectation is, in a divorce case, they don't get as much maintenance because they expected that they should, for the remainder of their working career, return back to work. So when they do return to work after taking an extensive time off, this will have a massive impact on their starting salary and ultimately their ability to generate wealth for a comfortable retirement. And it's often that they will struggle to meet a similar standard of living compared to before the divorce.
I think that's a really fair point, because obviously if you take a significant career break, it's not as easy as saying, well, you can just go back to work and you'll be able to find a job within a very short space of time. So I think
No,
that's a really, really
exactly.
important point. And I suppose the other element to that is women tend to, in a divorce situation, will tend to want to hold on to the matrimonial home because that is almost their safety net, without necessarily appreciating how much it can cost to run it if they don't have those maintenance payments or other source of income. So I think it's all of these different elements that you've raised, which I suppose feeds into my next question about how can financial planning really help women with ensuring that they're able to have a more secure financial future for both themselves and also their wider family.
So for me, the key to good financial planning is time. Like I've always said to my clients, like most planning and most problems we can fix if we've got a time period to do it in.
Yeah.
So the sooner you start planning, the more likely you are to achieve your goals at the lowest cost. It's facts. It's basically as simple as that. If women are planning to take time off for raising the children, it's essential that they include this in their planning, that they keep up to date with whatever pension contributions that's affordable for the family during this period. They need to utilize the tax release where possible, and the compound interest over decades before the funds will be accessed will make a considerable difference. They could also consider making voluntary contributions towards national insurance to increase their contribution years to ultimately gain full entitlement to the state pension during the course of their lifetime. Again, this will increase their income in retirement.
And actually, I suppose all of these elements feed into the concept of risk as well, because actually, if you make your investments, if you do your financial planning over a longer period of time, technically speaking, you're able to meet your objectives with a lower risk mandate because you've got a longer
Exactly.
time frame to actually achieve this. Whereas if your time frame is much shorter, potentially to meet your financial objectives, you actually have to increase your risk levels. So it actually pays to take the financial planning and investment management advice far earlier, and as you say, then give yourself that time to build up that pot in a secure way, but potentially also in a lower risk way. And I think it's on that basis that actually I'd like to bring in the fact that Quilter Cheviot did do a female client survey specifically focused on women and their experiences of investments and financial planning. And it feeds into the point that you mentioned earlier about confidence, that women do have a lower level of financial confidence when it comes to things like financial planning and investments. And our research actually found that their first experiences of both financial planning and investment management often come about as the result of an inheritance. So, what part do you think financial education at a younger age could play in terms of building up a woman's confidence and I suppose really empowering them to make those first steps in terms of financial planning and investments to make sure that they have a more secure footing?
I think it would have a massive impact, to be honest. If you think about anything in life, the more you talk about a topic, the better you educate yourself about the topic, the more you practice something, the easier it becomes, and the more confidence you have in addressing or participating in it. So, finance is exactly the same. If you start openly speaking about it and addressing the basics at a young age, it will become part of the fundamentals. So we will naturally start addressing financial planning at a young age. We'll start saving earlier. We'll protect our risks earlier. The ripple effect would be tremendously positive. So if you reduce the burden of your overall planning, you will have a longer period to save. It would also take out protection plans when you don't have medical conditions and when the premiums are more affordable. So overall, the net cost would be substantially less than leaving everything to a later stage in life.
It always astounds me that we have all this education within our schools on so many different topics, and yet finance does not feature. So something that definitely needs
But
to be addressed.
you can learn algebra because that will be very useful when in later life.
But you can't talk about compound interest or the effects of
No.
mortgage rate interest, things like that. It baffles me that we're expected to go out into the world and understand this immediately, and yet are never taught it in school, or potentially by parents who aren't as financially savvy either. So yeah, definitely work to do there, and hopefully this podcast will encourage people to find out more. And I think this is where, I suppose, a final point, that it is clear that women do have a lot to think about in terms of the financial journey they need to take. The trigger events. I mean, we've covered some of them today. We've talked about things like childcare, flexible working. We've touched upon the fact that at the other end of the spectrum, there's also caring for elderly relatives. We haven't even touched upon things like the menopause that can cause career disruptions. And as you said, Jo, longer life expectancy means that we have to make those smaller finances last longer. And all of these things combined really do potentially impact a woman's financial journey. So I suppose for those people listening today, what would be your call to action in terms of making sure that they can have that sense of stability and safety, whatever events they might encounter during their financial journey?
So I would say you need to start saving as young as possible. The sooner you save, the longer period of time that you will have, and also the less you have to start off with. So even if it's a middle amount, just start saving as soon as possible at a young age, because compound interest effectively is the eighth wonder of the world. You need to utilize as much of your allowances as possible. You need to claim your pension tax relief. You need to get the matching contributions that's available from your employer. You need to use your ISA allowance if possible. You need to build up your lifetime ISA account to purchase that first property. Even if you just start with these small amounts, you just need to get in the habit of religiously doing it. You need to track your national insurance contributions to ensure that you get as many full-time years as possible. You currently need 35 qualifying years to get the full state pension. So you can also make your voluntary contributions for the years that you're not working, but it's essential to just keep track of them and just seeing where you're at, and then just projecting how many working years you still have left. I always say to my clients, keep track of your finances, make a spreadsheet. With all the technology and things available these days, it's pretty easy to keep on top of it. If you've got a system that you've got in place and you're recording everything and you keep your finances up to date, it's much easier to do financial planning, and it's far less daunting.
I think some absolutely brilliant tips there, Jo, and thank you very much for all of those great insights. And I suppose to all of you listening today, there are lots of elements that we can really help with, but actually it all starts with you and just taking those first gentle steps into the world of finance by just getting an understanding of what your financial journey might actually look like. So I know we've covered a huge amount today, and hopefully you enjoyed the discussion on the podcast today. Now, we would love to hear from our listeners, so please do review the show now wherever you're listening and share it on your socials. It's incredibly important, particularly from a financial education perspective. So the more that this can be shared, the better it is for everyone concerned. And please do tag us at Quilter Private. It's also really important for us to understand what you, our listeners, would like for us to cover. So if there are topics or areas within the world of finance that you would like to understand more about, please do get in touch and let us know. Now, to make sure you don't miss a future episode, please do tap and subscribe using the buttons attached. In the meantime, do head over to our website at www.quilterprivate.com, where you can visit our Women and Investing Hub for our latest news, industry insights, and upcoming events and webinars. There's also a whole host of information covering a lot of the points that we've touched upon today. So probably a very useful place to start if you want to learn more about the world of financial planning and investments. That's it for us today. So again, thank you very much, Jo, for your great insights into the unique financial journey. that women need to take, and how there are a lot more elements to consider potentially than what a man may encounter. I think it's fair to say. And again, thank you to all of you listening today, wherever you are. We look forward to seeing you next time.